Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. You know how it is, right? Sometimes you need the need-to-know info fast. Well, that's what we do here. We take a mountain of research and break it down. And today, we're headed to Austria. We're looking at the current state of their workforce. Imagine you're prepping for a big meeting about, like employee satisfaction and future trends in Austria, but you just don't have the time to read through all the latest reports.
Well, that's where we come in.
Exactly. We're going deep on a brand new study. It came out just last September 2024, so it's got all the latest insights. And we're going to cover some really interesting findings, like the surprisingly high percentage of Austrian workers who are actually looking forward to going to work. I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, you don't hear that every day.
No, you don't.
Hmm.
And we'll look at what's making people more productive when they're working from home. Plus, we'll dig into whether Austrians feel like they're getting paid what they deserve.
And we're going to go beyond just the numbers. We'll talk about why this data matters and what it all means for the future of work in Austria.
Love it. Okay, so let's jump right in. Starting with job satisfaction. The study found that 7 out of 10 Austrian workers are pretty happy with their jobs. 55.2% said they're rather happy, and 14.6% are straight up very happy.
Yeah, so overall, it seems like a pretty positive work environment.
Yeah, I'd say so. But here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. 44% of those same workers said they wouldn't choose the same career path again. So what do you think is going on there?
Well, it's interesting, right? That kind of push and pull between feeling good about your current job, but maybe not seeing yourself on the same path forever. It could be a few things. Maybe people's priorities are changing, or maybe the economy is shifting things around, or, maybe some professions just aren't living up to people's expectations.
So they're happy now, but maybe not so sure about the long term. What does that tell us about the big picture in Austria, the overall work landscape?
I think it suggests that the workforce is going through some changes, Like maybe this is a generation that's really reevaluating what they want out of their careers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about working from home. One of the findings that really surprised me was that 32.1% of Austrians are actually more productive at home, compared to 28.5% in the office.
Yeah, it really makes you question that, that traditional idea that the office is the only place to get things done.
For sure. So what's the deal? Why are some people rocking those pajamas and crushing their deadlines?
Well, I mean, think about it. When you're at home, you probably have fewer distractions.
Yeah.
Right? You can manage your time and energy better, and there's no commute eating into your day. I think for some people, that all adds up to a better work experience, a more productive one.
Makes you wonder if all those water cooler conversations are really as crucial as we thought, huh? But what about the people who really thrive in a collaborative office environment?
I think that's the key, right? It's
Yep.
all about finding that balance between what works best for the individual and the work that needs to get done. Some people need that office energy, the buzz, while others find their focus better at home.
Totally. Okay, let's tackle the big one, something I think everyone's always thinking about. Pay. The study found that 76% of Austrians are happy with their pay, but almost a quarter of them feel like it's unfair.
And when we dig deeper, you see a difference between generations. Baby boomers tend to be the most content with their pay, while younger generations are less so.
Why do you think there's that gap? Is it just about experience?
Experience is definitely part of it, but I think younger generations are dealing with a whole different economic reality. Things cost more, the job market's more competitive, and maybe they're just more aware of pay gaps than previous generations.
So maybe they just expect more. And they're definitely not shy about speaking up. What does that mean for companies who are trying to attract and keep good employees?
Well, it means companies need to step up.
Yeah.
They need to make sure they're addressing pay gaps and being really transparent about salaries. Offering competitive pay is super important in today's market, especially if you want to appeal to younger generations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of what people want, the study also asked about career goals, and this one surprised me. Only 38% of Austrians said they want to be in a leadership position. More than half, 56%, said they're not interested at all.
It's definitely different from that, that classic climb the ladder mentality we often hear about.
So is ambition like out of style in Austria?
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I think it's more that people are changing their priorities. We're seeing more burnout. People are starting to question traditional leadership styles, and maybe they're just more focused on their personal lives than their job titles.
So it's not that they don't have ambition, they just define it differently. What does that mean for companies that are trying to develop their future leaders?
Well, they have to adapt, right? They need to understand what motivates this generation and create leadership opportunities that align with those values. Things like flexibility and work-life balance are really important to people today.
It sounds like the Austrian workplace is changing in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of those traditional ideas about work are being flipped on their head.
Totally.
Mm.
And that's why this study is so fascinating. It gives us a glimpse into how the Austrian workforce is evolving. And it offers some clues about what companies can do to keep up and stay ahead of the curve.
It's a lot to think about. Stay with us. We'll be right back to explore even more fascinating insights from the Austrian workforce in just a moment. And we're back for more of the deep dive. So we're continuing our look at the Austrian workforce, and I think this next part is really interesting, especially if you're, trying to figure out how to attract and keep those awesome employees.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about, job satisfaction and career goals. But what about those everyday things that actually make a difference at work? What do Austrian workers really care about in their jobs?
Let's get into it. The study asked Austrian workers what's most important to them, and the results might surprise you.
They might, yeah. Because even though fair pay is important, it's not actually the top priority.
Really? So what beats out a big fat paycheck?
Having a good atmosphere at work. A positive work environment was the most important thing for 68.4% of the workers. And close behind that, 58.6% said having friendly colleagues is super important.
Makes sense, right? If you enjoy the people you work with and the overall vibe is good, that can make a huge difference in how you feel about your job.
Yeah, totally. It's not just about, ticking things off your to-do list. It's about the people you're with and just the general feeling of the place. But don't worry, fair pay is still up there. It came in third with 57.5% of people saying it's really important.
So it's like a combo, right? Feeling valued both personally and financially. Okay, what else did people say they wanted?
Job security was number 4. 49% of people said it was important to them. So it seems like Austrian workers really value knowing that their job is stable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want to feel secure about their future with their employer.
Yeah, like they're looking for that best of both worlds situation. A great place to work, but also that peace of mind that comes with knowing you've got a secure job.
Exactly. And that's something for companies to really pay attention to, you know. If they want to attract and keep great employees in Austria, they need to create workplaces where people feel supported and appreciated and like they have a real future there.
Okay, so we've talked about the basics, but what about those extras? Those perks that can make a job even more appealing. What kind of things are Austrian workers looking for?
Well, the winner is flexibility. Flexible work hours were by far the most popular perk. 51% of people said that's a top priority for them.
Not surprising, right? Being able to, manage your own time and have a good work-life balance, that's huge for people these days.
For sure. It shows that companies who are willing to be flexible about when and where people work, they have a big advantage when it comes to attracting talent.
But it's not just about flexibility, is it? What else are people looking for?
Money always talks. 41.5% of people said that bonuses and premiums would make them more likely to go for a job.
Okay, so financial incentives are still a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. And right behind that was extra vacation time. 34.3% of respondents said having more vacation days would make a job more attractive. So it's clear that Austrians value their time off. They want to be able to recharge and enjoy their lives outside of work.
Yeah, it's all about balance, right?
Wow.
People want to be rewarded financially, but they also want time to actually enjoy those rewards and have some flexibility in their lives.
Exactly. Finding that balance between working hard and living well is key.
Okay, let's talk about something that I think is really interesting and also kind of controversial, using artificial intelligence in hiring. The study found that only 13% of Austrian workers have used AI in their job search, and a whopping 75% are skeptical about it.
Yeah, it makes sense that people would be a little cautious about AI, especially when it comes to something as important as their career. There are concerns about, is it really fair? Is it transparent? Could it be biased?
Yeah, it's like that black box problem. People want to know how the technology works and how it's making decisions that affect their lives.
Right. And until those concerns are addressed, I think we're going to continue to see people hesitant about using AI in hiring.
It definitely raises some big questions about the future of work. Will AI become something we can all trust, or will it always be kind of scary and uncertain?
I think only time will tell. But it's a conversation we definitely need to keep having, especially as AI becomes more common in our everyday lives.
Okay, let's move on to another topic that people tend to have strong opinions about: the gender gap at work. This study found that 57% of Austrians think that men have more opportunities than women. And even more than that, 70% of women agree with that statement.
It's a pretty clear sign that we haven't achieved gender equality at work yet. The study points to things like traditional gender roles and the lack of support for women in fields that are dominated by men as reasons why this perception exists.
It's pretty discouraging that these are still issues, even in 2025. So what can companies do? What can individuals do to close this gap?
Well, companies can do a lot. They can make sure men and women get paid equally. They can offer flexible work arrangements and have good parental leave policies for both men and women. And they can have things like mentorship programs and diversity training to, help address unconscious bias and make the workplace more inclusive.
So it's about creating a culture of equality from the top down, right? But what about what we can do as individuals? How can we make a difference?
We can all challenge stereotypes and call out bias when we see it. We can support and mentor women in our professional networks.
Yeah.
It's about, making small changes that can add up to bigger changes over time.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even small actions can contribute to a bigger movement towards equality. But before we move on from this, there's one finding that really stuck with me. It's about how pessimistic people are about actually achieving true gender equality.
Yeah, that statistic is pretty disheartening. Almost half of all Austrians, 49%, believe that complete gender equality at work will never happen.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak outlook. What do you think about that?
It's a really complicated issue, and there's no easy answer. But I think it shows how important it is to keep talking about this, to keep challenging our assumptions, and to keep pushing for progress. We can't let pessimism stop us. We need to use it to motivate us to prove those doubters wrong.
I love that. Using pessimism as fuel to create change. It's a good reminder that change is possible. But it takes all of us working together and believing that a more equitable future is possible. Stick with us. We'll be back with the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore even more insights into the Austrian workforce.
All right, we're back for the final part of the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, but we've got a few more juicy insights about the Austrian workforce to share before we wrap things up. I think you'll find this really helpful, especially, if you're about to head into that big meeting.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked about what Austrian workers value in a job, but let's get specific. What are those perks and incentives that really make a difference? The things that make people say, okay, I'm in. Where do I sign?
Yeah, give me the good stuff. What are we talking about here? Well, remember how we were talking about flexibility and work-life balance being super important to Austrian workers? It turns out it's not just something they like. It's something they really consider when deciding on a job.
So like flexible hours are at the top of the list.
Yep, you got it. 51% of people, they said, having flexible work hours would make them more likely to apply for a job at a particular company.
That's a pretty clear message, right? If companies in Austria want to attract the best talent, they gotta be flexible.
Exactly. But it's not just about flexibility. Bonuses and premiums, those are still a big deal. 41.5% said those financial incentives would make them more likely to apply for a job.
Okay, so work-life balance is important, but money still talks.
It definitely does. And it's not just about the money itself. It's about feeling like you're valued, like your work is appreciated, and the company's willing to reward you for it.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so what else is on the list of those must-have perks?
More vacation time. 34.3% of the people we talked to said having extra vacation days would make a job more attractive to them.
So it's kind of like a three-part thing, right? Flexibility, financial rewards, and then having time to actually enjoy life outside of work. Sounds like a pretty good combo.
Right. It shows what Austrian workers are really looking for, that balance
Yeah.
between their job and their personal life.
Yeah, totally. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to that question of gender equality in the workplace. Almost half of Austrians believe it'll never happen.
It's a tough thing to hear, but I think it's important to remember that change takes time. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes, everybody working together to change things.
So instead of getting discouraged by that statistic, we should use it as motivation to keep pushing for progress.
Exactly. Even small actions can make a difference. They can add up to big changes over time.
Well said. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Austrian workforce. I hope you found this helpful. We've covered a ton of information today, from job satisfaction and career goals to, the perks people want and the challenges of closing the gender gap.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion. And I think the main takeaway is that the Austrian workforce is changing. Things are evolving all the time. This deep dive is giving you a good foundation. But to really stay ahead of the game, you got to be curious. You got to keep learning and be ready to adapt as things change.
Couldn't said it better myself. So keep asking questions, keep challenging those old assumptions, and let's keep working to create workplaces where everyone can thrive. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.